Alright guys, welcome back. Again, I'm Dan and this is for another Wheel of Time video breakdown. So I just got done watching the second episode and let's change up our format. So I'm going to do a short version and then I'll have a longer version that'll come out later, and then we'll see what else we can pull out of this whole ordeal. So before I start, I'd just like to say, spoiler warning for the Amazon series. If you haven't watched it yet, stop, go watch that. As well as the book series. I'm not going to say you have to read the book series before listening to this, but I will have spoilers potentially for any points of it. So without any further ado, let's get started looking at this. So first of all, that opening though, oh my goodness. What a good way to start out, looking at a White Coat encampment. So good. So again, this is going to be the short video, so I'm not going to go super in depth other than to say I love this scene overall. The White Cloaks look amazing. I absolutely love the costuming design they've done on them. It's very sleek, it's fantasy yet modern, beautiful. Honestly, kind of makes me want to be one of them, except for their ideology, which I can't get down with. That being said, the whole premise behind this, showing that the White Cloaks, you know, clearly don't like channeling, don't like the Aes Sedai witches. They allude to that later on in the episode again. But that with the brutality, but their sense that they're right. They believe they are righteous in their cause. And, you know, the method is, like he said, brutality can be a way to mercy. So, very much on point with this. I think they've leveled them up a little bit, as some other people have said. I made them a little more powerful. I don't know if they made them more powerful so much as they have made it, what it seems to me, a little easier for the Aes Sedai to be captured potentially. If you notice, like the Battle on Winter Night or anytime Moraine's channeled, it takes some time. It's not a quick thing, which in the books it can happen very quick, like reactionary almost. As quick as you can throw up a block against a punch, they can capture somebody who's punching them in air. So it may not, that might be what we're seeing here. It might not necessarily be that the White Cloaks are being, you know, becoming seriously more powerful for this, but that they're lowering the Aes Sedai a little bit and how channeling works. Okay, so the opening credit scene now. Oh, we finally get to see one. First of all, love the music, love the melody of that vocalization there. Clearly, it is the weave being spun. I will say that there are two things on this that I like, and we'll move on. The first thing, that thread breaking at the beginning, chef's kiss. That's wonderful. And then just the way that it weaves. I initially was like, oh man, that's pretty angular, but it kind of worked. And there's a spot when it pans out and you see all the weaves above. And that was just, even thinking about it is giving me chills. So let's go ahead and keep going on to some more scenes that I want to go over and what I liked and didn't like. Before I get to that though, let's just say that overall, much better episode than the first episode. The first episode wasn't a deal breaker for me. It wasn't horrible. There were some changes that were made that I may not necessarily agree with, but I'll live with, and that weren't, you know, deal breaking for me in the grand scheme of things, but I didn't think were necessary. In this one, the changes that were made, I think were very necessary and really fit what we're going after. So the Taryn's Ferry scene, you know, there's not as many people. It plays out a little bit differently because it's just one person, but it still plays out in a very true to the book way, in my opinion. The only thing that I didn't necessarily like about it was, you know, that Moraine is channeling right there in front of the guy, and he's like, you know, you Aes Sedai are monsters, the White Cloaks are right. She's very upfront with the fact that she's an Aes Sedai, which is different than the books. Always try to keep that on the DL. But, you know, that's neither here nor there for this series. Clearly, she's a little more open about it, unless the White Cloaks come around, which, again, we'll get to later. But I think overall that scene, great, effective, wonderful. Let's talk about the dream sequences. That dream sequence that Rand has, very small, quick dream sequence, but the whole pulling the bat out, clearly CGI, but I think it goes into practical later on. I think what happened was there was a practical effect that they pulled out. It wasn't a bat, and then they replaced it with a bat later, because there is some very realistic fluids there. We'll leave it at that. And then to see the bats put out again in a dragon fang. I liked this dragon fang a little better than some of the other ones I thought were over heavy-handed. This one didn't do like some weird pan shot and show it. It was very subtle, and you had to kind of look at it to see that they were arranged that way. As far as the person in those dreams, we won't get into that in this video because I think that's a huge spoiler, and I might not be right. They may have changed that. I don't know how I liked the look of him in this particular scene. Maybe it'll get better. I've seen episode 3, obviously. Watched them all the first night they came out. And I didn't like it there either, but it did get better, and I'll explain that in the breakdown for the 3rd episode. But let's move on to the next scene where they actually run across those white cloaks. And I thought this was a very, very effective scene, showing the white cloaks, talking to them, their zealotry towards the light. But then the captain, commander, looking at him and saying, hey, you can go, and then seeing the questioner kind of ring those rings together like they're bells. It was really good, kind of chilling, and his whole aspect of how he approached that encounter with Moraine, being right up on her, very close, uncomfortably close, as, Lan pointed out, was very on point. And I like the point when he's talking about the Aes Sedai putting their fingers and everything, and then he grabs her hand, and he's looking at it. And I think he's specifically looking for something, like that, where somebody clearly wore a ring for a long time and didn't have it. We'll have to go back, but I think that Moraine is actually switching the finger that she puts it on. I'll have to go back and relook and see exactly what finger she's wearing it on each time. But if she wears it all the time, then yeah, there would be a thing like there would be a mark there, especially in a fantasy world where you're outdoors a lot more and you get more sun. So you're actually going to get sun tanned, and you're going to have a tan line where your ring was. Nonetheless, great scene. The only quip I have with it was the captain telling her that even though they don't seek, they stay away from Aes Sedai to go see an Aes Sedai about her wound. And I don't know. I mean, I know that in the books, much later on, we start to see that kind of that mentality come out. But so early, I don't know if that White Cloak would have said that. So neither here nor there. Moving on to the Shadow Lagoth stuff. You do hear whistling. So if you watch those scenes, there's a couple of scenes where you hear that whistling in the background, potentially alluding to Padden Fane. But the way that the Trollocs stop, I think that they're being directed to always be moving, not to ever stand still. And with the big headpiece, sometimes just looks like they're kind of swaying in the wind or doing this. It kind of looks a little wonky sometimes because of the horns. But the issue I have is they just all stopped in a line and just kind of stood there. It seemed really kind of wonky. I think that the Emmons Fielders by that point in time should be like, what's going on with them? They should have been looking over their shoulders as they were trying to force the horses into Shadow Lagoth. I think that would have been a much more effective way of conveying that. Now let's talk about actually being inside the Shadow Lagoth. This set is wonderful. It is pretty much... I didn't get this when they were walking through the streets initially, but when Rand leaves and goes up and you get that picture of the roofs and everything, that is almost exactly what was in my head canon. So that's amazing. There were a couple quippy things I had with this overall. I mean, I don't mind that they cut out, how Matt found the dagger, the fact that Rand wasn't with him. That's fine. There's a continuity error with the horses where they run off and then suddenly a couple of them were back. Maybe they ran back after the Shadows Waiting moved away from the area chasing some of the Two Rivers folk, or Emmons Fielders as we know them, but didn't see that occur. So they left, they ran away, and then they were back. Now we did see that one of the horses got dusted, and that's going to be the term that I'm going to continue to use for that. And there is a Easter egg, actually. If you look in the statue when they're paying him pass and he's standing like this, and I can't remember what's going on with the other arm, but he has one arm across his chest. You see that black dust, that same black dust that horse turns into, which means that, and that having that arm sticking out on a statue, that's the kind of place that pigeons and things would land. They make the statement, hey, there's no bugs, there's no birds. It's because you can see where they were dusted when they were on the statue. So I thought that was a very, very good and subtle thing there they threw in. The escape was fine. I will say that Yeah, the jump that Gwen and Perrin make is probably a little high up, and maybe should have injured them. Maybe they were protected by the light. Light blessed Tom and Rand, I guess. On the flip side, Rand and Matt trying to get out, I thought was very good and very telling. A lot of people laughed when they're at that door and Rand throws his stuff up over and goes, "Hoist me over," and Matt looks at him and says, "Hoist me over? Why don't you hoist me over?" Yeah, it's funny, but notice that he didn't necessarily say it in a funny way. It didn't have that same comedic timing and tone that Barney's been using as Matt in this series. It was a little more serious. I think that was the first instance that we get to see, hey, guess what? That dagger just kind of affected his judgment. So, yeah, Cursed Dagger already taking its hold on him, in my opinion. So after Matt and them get out and they get ready to start kicking across the lake, I like how Rand turns back around and goes, "We can't just leave him." And Matt's like, "Pretty sure we can." And, that was good both for comedic and then again showing that dagger might be affecting how he's thinking right now. He didn't want to go back for him. I don't think he would have anyways, but I think he was a little quicker to be like, let's get out of here now, because that stuff will kill you. The quote from Moraine when she's like, "Where are we? You've killed us all." Great. I love the way that was done, because it shows kind of he didn't have to say where they were. That water bond probably made her realize, oh crap, we're in Shadow Lagoth. We're dead. Luckily they get out. It does look like those horses are back. So it probably was Moraine and Lan's horses. They would be trained to potentially come back as a trained war horse and an Aes Sedai's steed. So they probably did come back. Then you have that last scene where Lan lays down Moraine, gives her some water, and then gets the sword to his neck, and you can see that it's chipped, and you're like, oh, that's a Trolloc sword, but a Trolloc wouldn't just put it there. In my mind, I already knew that it was Nynaeve. As soon as he started laying her down on the rocks, it was taking a while, and they kind of stayed in that close-up aspect where all you could really see was his head and Moraine. I kind of knew that something like that was going to happen, and I knew it was going to be Nynaeve because it's kind of very similar to what happened in the books. So this episode overall felt much different than the first episode. First episode felt very rushed, felt very piloty, felt like they tried to throw a little too much into it. This one, boom, 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 boom. It had some clear defined goals, and you were moving that story and plot line ahead. They didn't depart from the books too much. When they did, I thought it was smart. Yeah, we didn't get to see some of the things like the Drakkar, but hey, you know what? It means it'll be even cooler later on when we see it, and it didn't do much in the early stages anyways. The one thing I think they could do eventually is, hey, show that things like ravens can be the eyes for the Dark One. They haven't delved into that yet, and I think maybe they're saving that. I think right now that the Trollocs keep finding them because of Pat and Fane. So there you go. That is the quick review of, or reaction, whatever you want to call it, of episode 2 for Amazon's Wheel of Time. Please click that like, subscribe, and bell icon. Leave a comment. Let me know if you like this content. If you think I should do anything different. And go ahead and start recording the more long form breakdown, which will probably be a half hour to 40-minute video. So until then, you guys have a wonderful one, and I'll see you later.